Perfect, perfect. Well, first off, I just wanted to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with everyone on this webinar today with Toronto Starts. I think this topic is pretty crucial and pretty important when when talking about startups, when talking about entrepreneurs. Hiring a perfect team. How you can find, select, and retain top talent. Now, I'm going to give just a very short, brief introduction of who I am. So my name is Peter Mills. I'm a technical recruiter, also an account manager. I work for a company based out of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, called TalentLab. We're a small boutique headhunting agency that specializes in niche technical recruiting for clients. So myself, in particular, I've filled hundreds of niche technical roles across many tech streams for startups and also for large enterprises across North America. Specifically with startups, I've worked with early stage startups. I've worked with startups that are more in the growth stage. I've worked with also startups that are like pre-IPO. So I've had a lot of experience recruiting with different companies across the board. Also, as you can notice, my headshot is very old. That's actually me at the beginning of my career. And at that point, I was just solely tactical. I was just solely a recruiter. Now I've sort of, as of late, more recently in the last few years, transitioned to sort of a more of an account management position where I do work directly with the client. And I've had the opportunity to advise, to kind of be like an advisor to a lot of startups and a lot of clients across the board in terms of sort of more strategic focus with the recruitment strategies. So in terms of a little bit of an agenda and some of the specific topics that I'd like to cover with everyone today. Number one, I'm going to go into talking a little bit about some hiring challenges and common mistakes that a lot of startups and a lot of entrepreneurs have made. Now, these are going to be some obvious challenges. These are also kind of try to put in my sixth sense here and give you some firsthand, knowledge and experience from my end. I'm going to talk about the importance of employer branding, when looking at hiring the best talent, going into developing a hiring process, some different talent strategies in terms of, different tools, different methods in terms of finding talent. And then, I think most importantly, to sum up this presentation, I'm going to talk about how to retain talent. You've got a good staff on board. How do we keep talented people? Because I think what the last few years have really showed us is it's hard to retain. It's hard to retain top talent, and hopefully I'll give everyone a bit of value in this presentation, and we can afterwards finish it off with a bit of Q&A. So just to start off with, when I was putting together this presentation, found this quote online. I think it's very representative of what I'm going to be talking about today. And you can have the best strategy, the best building in the world, but if you don't have the hearts and minds of people who work with you, none of it comes to life. And I think, same goes for a company. You could have the best product in the world. You could have the best service, but if you don't have the people that are alongside you that are going to be able to execute it, then it's going to be very, very challenging for it to come to life. So, recruitment is just one piece of the pie, but it is a very complex piece. And, if it's not done with the same amount of attention and the same amount of love as some of the other aspects of starting a business, then, it's really, really hard to take those next steps. So when we talk about some hiring challenges faced by startups, now these are some challenges that are a little, internal, also external challenges. First thing that comes to mind is the lack of hiring resources. Depending on the size of the company, depending on the stage, chances are, you got to build it up from the beginning, and there is usually going to be a lack of resources available. You might not have a recruiter on staff. You might not know much about recruiting. So, I mean, it is always going to be a process, but the lack of hiring resources is definitely right out of the gate puts it at a bit of a disadvantage. Probably the biggest disadvantage, though, and I'll talk a little bit about employer branding, but low brand recognition. Right out of the gate, companies that are, in the very early stages of existence don't have the same brand recognition as some of the more established companies. These next two hiring challenges kind of go hand in hand. I think rising salaries, extremely competitive market. We've seen that a lot in the last 2 years, really since the pandemic. I think also too with COVID, people being able to work remotely, people having more access to talent across the country, across North America. It's super competitive. And since it's super competitive, companies are throwing a lot of money at some of the best talent. And with that in mind, salaries keep going up. And depending on the constraints for the company, it's sometimes hard to meet those numbers when trying to land the best talent. And then insufficient skills to effectively evaluate talent. Again, depending on the stage of growth, depending on the people that you have on board, you might not have that person that is going to be able to effectively evaluate, which developers are good, which developers aren't so good, which IT people are good, and so on and so forth. So, from the get-go, having the skills to effectively evaluate, what's good talent versus what's not so great talent, is also super important. So moving on here, talking about some of the common hiring mistakes that are out there nowadays, and again, like I mentioned, some things that I've personally seen in my role. Number one, miscalculating the number of employees needed and hiring too quickly. A lot of companies run into the trap of just jumping into hiring and jumping into recruiting quite quickly. And I mean, this might be because they've got a deadline, they've got, investor money at stake. It's high stress, it's quick. But a lot of companies, they need to take a step back and they need to go through the process of developing a sound hiring process, as opposed to wasting valuable time and money. And that same goes to constrained hiring budget. Like I said, so there's a lot of things to allocate that budget for at the beginning and in the early days. And if that budget isn't, if at least some of it's not directed towards hiring, again, it gets left out of the picture, and it can definitely suffer. Now, going on, limiting your hiring to friends and acquaintances or just your close personal network. Now, you're probably thinking, well, I mean, that sounds like an excellent way to start by building a team. And I think the main word to take out of that is limiting. One thing that, I think it's kind of human nature. It's a comfort zone. The people that those are the people you want to contact to work with you. And while that is a great method to get started, it shouldn't be the only strategy. And in some of my later slides, I will give some other different strategies in terms of ways to find talent. Just bringing up just a quick story. A few years back, I was at a seminar or a conference, and there was a CEO, founder of a tech startup that was speaking, and talking similarly about this topic. And one thing that they mentioned was, you'd think, when you're hiring somebody, you want to hire somebody that you like. You want to hire somebody that you can maybe see yourself going to the bar after work and maybe having a drink with. But this person was a little bit more against that idea. They decided, if I'm evaluating somebody, if I'm hiring somebody, they want to hire somebody that's going to sit at the other end of that boardroom and challenge them. And I think that's important. I think you do still want to mix. You want people that you like and people that are going to kind of fit into that whole culture piece. But, if you just hire people that are just, of that same mindset and don't provide that sort of diverse way of thinking, or aren't able to challenge different ideas, then you're just going to still be okay with the status quo for forever. And I think the best startups are the ones that can bring in different perspectives and different ideas, and keep evolving as they grow. Hiring people solely based on culture fit solely based on skill set. I think the importance of that is just finding a balance. I think hiring somebody just because they have specifically the best skills, but maybe they don't fit into your company culture, probably not the best, the best hire in the long term. And on the other way around, if they don't have the skill set, but they might fit into the culture, again, might not be the best hire. So again, it's just all about trying to find that right balance and trade-off that's comfortable. But either way, picking one side or the other, you're not always going to turn out the best. And this is an interesting one: neglecting candidate experience. And if anybody's ever gone through the process of interviewing for a job, you know what I'm talking about. You've probably had various degrees of candidate experience, maybe positive ones, maybe negative ones. Maybe you didn't get the job, but you still had a good experience and it was positive. Maybe you just absolutely hated it and the recruiter was awful or the client was awful, and it just had to put a bad taste in your mouth. That's super important. And I mean, the more companies ignore that, regardless of if their candidates' experience are poor during the interviews for whatever it may be, maybe just not a sound hiring process, maybe it was a bad interview, that sticks with people. And I think, as companies grow and as companies get bigger, as companies get more noticed, this is something that's still going to stick. People don't forget. So starting off early and laying that groundwork for that candidate experience is super, super important. Now, going on to my next slide, hiring people for your startup, where should I start? And I think this is an important question. I think it doesn't just start with, writing a job description or, identifying what the hiring process is going to look like. I think it really, really, really starts with building a strong employment brand, and culture that, is going to attract talent at the end of the day. And going back to one of my previous points, I think when a company is first started, they have a bit of a disadvantage to more larger recognized companies. Chances are, the candidates that you're looking to reach out to have probably never heard of your company. It's never even crossed their minds. So, I think one thing that startups have to be wary of and really, really look to do right from the get-go is start building that employment brand. Start, at a very minimum, it comes down to word of mouth. So, it comes down to, giving people a sense of what it's like to work at your company, maybe doing some social media, advertising, branding, having an online presence. Candidates, when they hear about your company, probably the first thing they're going to do is, put you into Google. And if they don't find any sort of online presence, chances are they probably are not going to give it a second thought. So, I think as much as, jumping into developing a hiring process, building that employment brand from the get-go and starting off at that foundation is going to be super, super important. And again, I think, it comes down to defining a clear mission and clear values. And kind of when it comes down to culture, it's like, what does the company stand for? And how do they want to be seen by potential talent? So that's what I have for a solid place to start. And then, building a foundation, hiring leaders who are capable and can build and lead great teams. Now, what I'm talking about is probably, your first maybe 3 to 5 hires. Like these need to be the people that are going to set the tone for the rest of the company and for the future. And, hiring leaders who, can not only, inspire, but also, nurture, mentor, coach. When you bring on more junior employees, these are the people that your employees are going to look up to. So these are going to be really, really crucial in terms of the first hires are going to be the most important hires. And then also adding in, I think, it's probably depending on the company, depending on the product, depending on the service. It's always going to be healthy to have a mix of maybe some generalists, some people who are maybe knowledgeable in different parts of the business. But also, I mean, if the company or if the product that you're developing is super specialized, having somebody who's an expert in that field, having somebody who can, like I said, build that vision that the company's looking to go. Now, in terms of developing a solid hiring process, developing a solid hiring process, and this refers to, finding, selecting, and hiring top talent. And I think a lot of people, when they think of a hiring process, they think of the interviews, they think of, writing a job description, they think of posting it online, but it doesn't start there. And one thing that I wanted to make super, super, super important is, it starts at, identifying that there's a hiring need within the company, taking a step back at a very holistic approach and sitting together, collaboratively with who's involved and identifying what's the need and what type of person we want to hire. And that comes into, creating a persona. Right? What are the skills we need this person to retain? What are the soft skills? What type of culture fit? What are the demographics? Do we need a junior person, an intermediate? Could we, do we need somebody with people management skills? All of this should be identified before jumping in head first. And in terms of what startups have as an advantage, to maybe a more established enterprise or a corporation, is you have the advantage of being quick and speedy. And I've had the opportunity to recruit with alongside some of the much larger, more established organizations. And while it's quite easy to get on the phone and tell a candidate that you're recruiting for Intel or Dell, it's those companies have a longer hiring process. It's just the reality of it. They have a lot of more hoops they have to jump through. And with a startup, you have the opportunity to be super adaptive. You have the opportunity to be super flexible. You can make quick hires if you want to. And I think, having people on board, having people collaborate, knowing what they want, knowing what they need, being able to get through the interview process and making that hire can happen quite quickly. And especially too, I mean, if you have deadlines, if you have, people, customers you need to please, this is super, super crucial in being able to execute on that. In terms of some talent strategies, now I have 2 slides here that I'm going to talk about, and 4 different methods and tools that hopefully you can take away in terms of how to find talent. And some of these are going to be a little bit more specialized in terms of my role as a technical headhunter, but hopefully you can, if you are an entrepreneur or somebody who is who's working as a part of a startup, you can maybe take some of these tips and tricks and use them. When we talk about ways to find talent, I think probably one of the most common ones is through job postings, right? You go on Glassdoor, Indeed, job postings are now on LinkedIn. And these are ways of attracting candidates to apply to your posting. In terms of job postings, I've seen a lot of really, really good ones, and I've seen a lot of really, really bad ones. And I think you can probably all relate to this, and you've probably all seen a job posting that completely turned you off. And even if you were a perfect fit, you probably didn't really feel like applying to it anyways. One or a few key points that I wanted to mention about writing a job posting. Number 1, job title needs to be reflective of the role. I think there were a few years there when specifically, you see some startups and some companies trying to, create like sort of a fun culture and a fun vibe around their company using like titles like DevOps Ninja or developer, DevOps evangelist, whatever it may be. But long story short, that job title is not really going to, it's not really reflective of the role. And I think from the perspective of, if you put yourself in the shoes of a candidate looking to apply to a job, that's probably not what they're thinking of. They're probably not going to write in developer ninja into the search bar. They're probably going to write down full stack developer, backend developer, something that's reflective of what they're trying to look for. So even though it might be fun, I definitely recommend against using some of those catchy names. Including an engaging overview of the company and job. I think it's an introduction paragraph, 2 to 3 sentences, who the company is, what they do, what's their mission, what are their values, how is their product going to change the world? This is how you can kind of engage people. Using concise language when talking about responsibilities. I'm sure everybody has seen those job postings where it's got about 20 bullet points and, a lot of very complicated wordy lingo that's used. I think the best job postings are the ones that are concise, the ones that are to the point, the ones that are reflective of what is actually entailed in the job. Also, the responsibilities, should not just focus on, this person will be doing X, Y, and Z, but focusing on how this person is doing X, Y, and Z and how it's going to contribute to the business objectives. I think everybody likes to contribute. Everybody likes to add value. And, a catchy job posting is one that's going to show, you're going to do X, Y, and Z and contribute to this for our company. So that's just another tip. And then also, don't be afraid to include anything regarding any perks or benefits. Usually, I like to see this at the bottom of a job posting. Maybe you're offering some form of, 4 weeks of vacation, unlimited vacation. Maybe you have a fun office culture, whatever it might be. These are the things that people, will look for and leave a lasting impression. But I do warn you, don't say anything that is not true. So including that, you're going to be offering all of these things and, they get to the end of the process and nothing's in the job offer letter is not always a good scene either. Reach out. So this is a little bit of a more proactive approach to recruitment. As a headhunter, this is what I'm doing, pretty much, 70 to 80% of my time. And it's the proactive way of reaching out to candidates and, telling them about an interesting opportunity. These are compelling messages that are going to get you into, on the phone with somebody or get you on a Google Meet with somebody to tell them about your job. Now, these are, a lot of the time, these are directed towards passive candidates. And what I mean by passive candidates versus active candidates, as you could probably imagine, active candidates are people who don't have a job, who are looking for a job. Passive candidates are the ones who are employed, the ones who, maybe they're not thinking about a job switch, or maybe if they are, they're not, they're not shooting out 50 plus resumes to employers. So these are the people that you can send out these proactive reach outs to and hopefully get them on the phone and tell them about your opportunity and understanding why a person might be excited about an opportunity and tailoring that message appropriately to draw interest. So it could be about an exciting product that you're building. It could be about a new technology that the person has an opportunity to use. So thinking of it from a candidate perspective of what's going to be exciting to them at the end of the day, and trying to be able to offer that value to them. And then making your reach outs personable. And I think as a recruiter, this is always an interesting one, because I think somebody in a job, you've probably received the classic reach out from a recruiter on LinkedIn. And you can probably tell right out of the gate from looking at it that it was written by somebody and then they blasted it out to 100 other people. And they're just on a fishing expedition. So making your reach outs personable, make it known that you actually looked at their profile or you took the time to understand that, okay, this is what this person does. This is why they would be potentially a good fit or interesting. that goes a whole long way. As a recruiter, the amount of times I get the feedback from candidates, even though they decide, yeah, I'm fine, I don't need a job, but hey, thanks for looking at my profile. It shows that you didn't just scroll over and send me an automated message. It really makes a difference. And then don't be overly salesy. I think nobody likes a pushy salesman. Nobody likes a pushy recruiter either. So it goes hand in hand. In terms of a few other strategies that I wanted to talk about, networking, I think this strategy should never stop. This should be ingrained into everybody's practice and everybody's recruiting strategy. And I think it's probably the most efficient and cost-effective way to source potential talent. Now, it could be through the form of, just networking through platforms like LinkedIn or social media. It could be actually getting out and going to an event, going to a conference, meeting like-minded individuals, meeting individuals in other industries who have different skill sets. These are ways that you're going to be introduced to people who are at the top of their game in their career. And also going back to the employer branding topic, it's going to be the way that enables leaders to deliver the message and vision of what they're doing at their company, and showcasing company culture. So it's all a excellent way to get out there and again, like I said, to meet people and to source potential talent. And then social media. LinkedIn is probably the single most effective tool to build professional connections in our industry. Every recruiter uses it. It's probably the quickest, fastest way to get somebody into a job. And it's a great way for an entrepreneur, a startup to employ that as well, and great way to connect with people. Like I said, sending reach outs out to passive candidates. And then also employer branding and advertising, going back to the whole branding topic, can be done using Twitter, can be done using Facebook, can be done using other social media platforms as well. But either way, it could be used as a starting point. Well, one thing I wanted to mention about this, though, is I think either you do it well or you don't do it at all, or you get somebody to do it who's going to do it well. I've seen, kind of two sides of the spectrum where it's a new company, it's an early stage startup, and they get somebody to start posting things on their social media page, and it's a little bit simple. It doesn't really get the clear picture across. And then on the other hand, you see great social media pages that can really showcase the company. Not to mention, if you're worried about that, then there's a lot of different options. You can bring in an SEO company, you can bring in a PR company. There's lots of different people that are really specialized in this area, that can help with that branding strategy to help bring that to life. And then online communities and knowledge sharing groups. Online communities like Toronto Starts, meetups is another one. It's all places where like-minded individuals go and can share their ideas and collaborate. And there's a ton of different online communities out there. And our agency, actually, we've done some events focusing in the developer communities in both Ottawa and Toronto, and going to their events, supporting them, talking about how TalentLab can help. It's there's different communities out there that can help with that strategy as well. And not to mention knowledge sharing groups. So you've probably heard of GitHub, Stack Overflow. There are different platforms where developers, for example, can share their code and collaborate, and again, share their knowledge on what they do. So again, lots of good places to find some of the best talent, and lots of different strategies to use. I think one takeaway from this is you have to be kind of scrappy with these strategies. It's not sort of a one size fits all approach. I think as an entrepreneur, as a founder of a company, you have to kind of use these different strategies and different tools in your tool belt, and see which ones work, which ones might work better, and use your time and efforts effectively. So moving on to talking about how a recruitment agency partnership can help. And I just wanted to give a bit of a brief overview of what I do at Talent Lab and what an agency basically does in general is we get hired out by a client to do a very specialized search or headhunt to find a particular candidate. And I think at the end of the day, it's a really, really good opportunity for a company to save valuable time and money. And you're probably asking, well, doesn't your service cost money? Yes, it does. But I think, in the case again of speed and efficiency, we specialize in finding specific people and specific skill sets. And that's what that's the type of service that we can provide. So as long as we know what we're looking for, it's not going to take you a full year-long cycle to find that diamond in the rough. The access to some of the best talent in the market, again, building professional connections, building a network of specific skill sets is what we do. And it's an opportunity to tap into that network as well, and also introducing your brand to new markets. When I get on the phone with somebody, get on the phone with a candidate and tell them about a job, I'm not just telling them about the job. I'm telling them about the company, telling them about the brand, telling them about the mission, the values. Why they're unique, why they're interesting, why should you care about this company? So it is, it's a really, really good opportunity to trust somebody to be able to, again, showcase that employer branding aspect of what you do. And then market knowledge and expertise. I think just knowing what's going on in the industry, knowing what's going on in other industries, knowing information about salaries, where the competitors are, what the competitors are doing. These are all some things that we're very knowledgeable about as well. But also too, I mean, how should I put this? We might not be the best partner in certain situations. So I think, hiring out an agency like us, in this case, if it's an early stage and you're looking for something super, super niche, probably a good partnership. But there's tons of different recruiting agencies out there that can provide different values. Some might be very, very focused in the finance space. Some might be very, very focused in a different area of business. Specifically, like I said, ours is focused with high tech, so we can find the best high tech talent and so forth. So again, evaluating what, not only building out your own internal recruiting strategy, and then maybe complementing it with using an agency, depending on the situation, can definitely really, really, really help complement whatever strategy you're looking to approach. And then going on into just discussing quickly about creating an effective interview process. In terms of creating an interview process, I think determining first and foremost, you've got your candidate persona, who you're going to be trying to hire, or have a rough idea of who you're looking to hire. You understand the need. Now it's about, setting out a process and determining, how many interviews we're going to have, what's the purpose and what's the style of the interviews, which participants are going to be involved. You see some companies, they want to get through it super fast. So they might have, one conversation and then it might be a done deal. Another company might take a different approach where they'll have one interview with the main hiring manager and then a second panel interview where they might include a few different members or stakeholders or some team members for the person to meet. So having this planned ahead and understanding, so what type of value you're looking to get out of this interview process is super, super important. And then not to mention, obviously, come prepared. Remember that the candidate experience is important, and coming prepared doesn't mean, having a list of question 1 to 10 that you're going to ask. I think having an overview of some questions and some things you're looking to get answered is super, super important. But also, interviews shouldn't sound kind of like robotic. And I know some of the best interviews that I've had had the feedback from candidates are the ones where, it felt like an excellent discussion or a conversation with the person. It flowed, the conversation flowed. It didn't feel like I was being interrogated, or it didn't feel like it was an interview. And again, that just goes down to the candidate experience regardless. In terms of things to look for when interviewing potential candidates, now these are some things that I take from it. I think again, it's not a one size fits all approach, and when it comes to developing that hiring process, this is going to go back to what that ideal candidate persona looks like and what you're looking for. So I mean, communication style, personality fit, all of the soft skills that you're looking for in the candidate. Do they fit? Do they match? And I mean, that might be brought out through different questions you might ask. It might be brought out through asking about different experiences, or asking about how they react in terms of different situations. So it can be done a variety of different ways, but overall, those are a few of the things that I would look for. And then obviously, does the candidate have the hard skills to make them successful in the role? I think just from a very straightforward approach, do they have what it takes to make them operate? I think also too, keeping in mind though, that if a candidate's really, really good in one thing and maybe they're not so good in another, don't automatically treat it like a checklist. And it's like, oh, you can't hire that person because they don't have, or maybe they're more beginner or intermediate. Use your common sense. If it's something that, hey, this person showed a lot of, promise, they seem like they're willing, they have a strong willingness to learn. If given the opportunity, maybe they can ramp up quickly. This is things to keep in mind, and it's always tough when somebody gets turned away from a job just because it's one little thing that they're missing from their toolkit, but they have the prowess to jump in and learn. And I think from a startup perspective, these are things to really, really keep in mind, because I mean, if it's somebody that's going to add value and going to be a good hire at the end of the day, just because they don't have one little skill set, or if they don't check off the boxes, it's not really a good reason to turn them away. And then, I mean, asking obviously what value will the person add, not only in the short term but the long term as well. Now, to finish things off, I think this is a really, really, really important topic. And how do we retain top talent, and what do candidates value the most? You've got your team built, things are going well. In today's day and market, there's a lot of movement out there. People are switching jobs. People are looking to grow their career. People are looking to make more money. There's all of these different things that come into effect. And I think, not paying attention to the noise, but focusing as an organization, what are we doing right, and how can we keep doing things right? And a few topics that I have jotted down here, employee engagement. How engaged are your employees? How happy are they? Do they feel like their opinions are being listened to? Making them feel a part of the organization. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Employees who aren't engaged are not going to be doing their best work. They're probably going to be, looking for that engagement. I mean, it's human nature as humans. And then recognition and rewards. And I think from a recognition standpoint, just a pat on the back doesn't always do it. I mean, people like to be rewarded, whether that be through performance bonuses, incentives. I mean, it could be as simple as a monthly target is met and you get, a free gift card or whatever. It comes down to just are your efforts being rewarded at the end of the day. Equity. I mean, this is one massive advantage that startups have in terms of being able to offer equity and being able to say, you have some skin in the game. If you want to do good work, if you see value in this vision, you'll be rewarded for it. As the company does well, you do well. And I think, this is a massive piece that you can be able to offer and retain those top employees through the years with offering them offering that chance. Professional development and career growth is one thing. When I'm on calls with candidates, and something I ask them, what's important to them is professional development and career growth. Like people don't like to stay stagnant. They don't like to, they get bored. As humans, we get bored easily. They want new challenges. They want interesting work. So I mean, being able to offer them, training in terms of learning a new skill, learning a new programming language, whatever it may be, going to different conferences, these are all super, super important. And, career growth, people like to see that if I do well, if I meet my targets, if I'm adding value, will there be a pathway of growth for me at this company? And if there's not, they're going to look up, they're going to look elsewhere. So it's, that's super, super important in terms of what to offer. And work-life balance is really, really, really big nowadays. And I think, people are always, they want to shut down after they finish their workday. And I think everybody having, in terms of avoiding burnout, in terms of, making sure they have a long career, being able to find that balance is crucial. And I think as a startup, I completely understand that, there are going to be those times where you're going to have to work overtime or work weekends or, work a little bit harder than normal. And I think, at the end of the day, somebody who's signing up for a type of, an opportunity or a work experience, they should know what they're getting into and just have that communication and transparency. The worst thing to happen is saying to them at the beginning of the process is like, absolutely, we respect work-life balance. And then you get into the job 1 week, 2 weeks in, and they're calling you at 10, 11 o'clock at night and asking you, what they're doing and why isn't this done? So, I think it is about being transparent. And I think going back to that whole employer branding thing and that whole trust is, if you're going to say you're going to do something and you're going to say you're going to maybe incorporate that into your company values, you better deliver on it. So, and then, continuing to build a strong brand and culture, this shouldn't stop. This should be ongoing, and, keep hiring good people. I think good people want to work with good people and want to surround themselves with good people. And the more good people you get working with your company, the easier it is the easier it's going to be to attract the top talent. And, just as a bit of like let's call it a concluding statement here. I think, one thing that is pretty consistent across of all of these strategies is respect. Respect your employees, respect the time they're putting in, respect the effort they're putting in, and they're going to respect you. So, most of the time they're going to respect you. But I think, really respect is kind of the name of the game when it comes to these things. And it is quite shocking the amount of employers that don't adhere to some of these values, and it's tough to see, because I think they could definitely be able to have their retention percentages boosted a little bit. So yeah, anyways, thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I hope everybody got some value out of it. Now I've got a Q&A slide here, and I have my LinkedIn link posted at the bottom. I'm not sure if it's clickable. I should have checked with that before. But anyways, if you search Peter Mills on LinkedIn, and it'll be under the company TalentLab, you should be able to find me and send me a LinkedIn request. And if anybody ever wants to have a coffee chat, I'm more than happy to. And yeah, thanks a lot.
Great, Peter. That was great information. We've got a lot of questions coming in over the YouTube channel. I'm going to put your LinkedIn link in the chat room and on YouTube, if that's okay, so people can click on it.
Yeah.
But our first question here is, what is the average hiring turnaround time in Canada for a new startup?
The average hiring turnaround time. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know the average. If you were to Google it right now, I'm not sure. I can speak from my perspective. Typically startups that I work with, I would probably put it between 2 and 4 weeks. So
Given that
I hope that number is right if you were to Google it.
I am, I think they're asking for your experience. So I think,
Yeah,
given that a startup wants to hire, this is very specific, a curator that has influence in the Canadian art ecosystem, what is the best approach that would give the best results?
a curator. Oh, this is it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but
Yeah,
I mean,
very specific.
if I was in this position, I mean, I would start with trying to build that network out. I mean, if I don't know much about that sort of landscape, but I'd imagine there's lots of different communities and groups out there. Maybe looking into some of the different art societies or art galleries across the country, getting their take, maybe finding who is involved in hiring these people from these different institutions. That would probably be my approach in that case.
Yeah, I would agree. Getting out to where the curators are
Yeah,
physically, if you can physically get to them at these art shows or wherever they meet, is the best
exactly.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would be a good strategy for early hires on options? And how do you strike the balance between salary versus stock options as an early stage startup?
That's a very, very good question. And I think, it all depends. I think one thing that typically I think is kind of common across the board is, if you join a startup, you're going to take a lower salary, but there's the promise of options. Now, I think it's understanding kind of the balance in terms of not completely underpaying, because I mean, you get into the challenge of like, well, I'm offering you this salary because I'm offering you so much in equity and options. Now, the right type of candidate will, who wants to work with a startup will probably see that as yeah, that makes sense. It's going to be long term. I'll take a hit on my salary, make the money up in options. So I mean, it depends on who you're recruiting and who you're hiring, but I think it's not offering too low of a salary that's going to cause them to say absolutely not, but trying to meet it halfway is probably the sweet spot. But I think it really all depends.
Great answer. And yeah, it always depends on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Are we able to use a recruitment firm if we know we'll be hiring with options? And does the costs change if you're hiring with options when you're using a recruiting firm? Because it's usually a percentage of the salary or something.
Yeah, that's another great question. So I mean, typically typically in the model that we use, so you would we would charge like a flat fee base. Usually it's about 17.5 to 20%. This is for us, mind you. I mean, some companies will have different payment models, but it's a percentage of that person's base salary. So sometimes, I mean, that could include any signing bonus, sometimes it doesn't, but typically that's how it works. So it has no direct correlation to the amount of options that hire is getting. So it's kind of irrelevant in that case. They would just be, they would be using, if they were using a recruitment firm, it would just be based on the base salary that the candidate would be paid.
With diversity, equity, and inclusion candidates
Mhm.
usually being left out of the traditional hiring pools, how do we gain access to diverse candidates?
How do we gain access to diverse candidates? I think diversity inclusion, is something that, the company should be cognizant of including that in their branding strategy. I think, there's a lot of benefits to diversity and inclusion. I mean, you get diverse group of individuals together in one room who have different ideas and can bring different perspectives, that's what it should be all about, right? It's all about including different people from different walks of life. And I think there's not just one method of trying to try or a method of or a talent pool of diverse candidates. I think it starts with the employment branding and the employment strategy. I think including it from the get-go is going to attract candidates from all walks of life.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And one of the best ways, just as a side note for anybody listening to this, that I've seen people approach this if they're looking for something specific, like specifically targeting people from the underserved community or something, is offer a small scholarship program.
Yeah,
By doing that, you'll get people who are applying from your specific area that you're looking for, and you'll get top quality candidates. And you can do that for not a lot of money.
absolutely. I love that.
What type of research on a company do people do before working with them? And this is a reflection to go, the follow-up is, and where should startups focus on building their reputation as a good company to work for?
That's a great question. So, I mean, a lot of people will put the name of the company into Glassdoor. I think a lot of candidates that I talk to will reference Glassdoor as being a way to kind of look at, does this company have a presence? Does it have reviews? I think there's a number of different other platforms out there that you'll have to look into that provide people with an access on providing reviews on different organizations. I think that's key. But what was the other part of the question? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
So it was one, where do people go to look for? And as such, because you said you need to start building your reputation as a good company to work for, where do you do that? I'm trying to match where people are looking and where do I start putting information, but I'm a great company, work for me.
Right. So where do you start and what? Yeah. So I mean, whatever is easiest to start. I think building out a website, building out some sort of online presence from the get-go is probably the most important way to start. And then whether it be advertising or putting a presence out on different platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it may be, could be secondary options. But I think it really should start at building out that that online presence from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think sometimes maybe some of the behind the scenes pictures and videos that people do on Instagram
Yeah,
help get people a feel for what it's like there.
for sure. Yeah, exactly.
Another question here from Zoom. Why is it that not so many girls, females, or women apply for startup jobs? I've got an answer for this, but you go ahead.
That's an excellent question. And
it's the same reason why women make better founders than men.
I'd like to hear your answer, Craig. I'm a little bit slow on the uptake here.
It's okay. Just it's all right. I believe it's because women are more risk averse than men.
Right.
And taking a job at a very risky company is not necessarily something I would like to do. I'd like to take a job at a non-risky company.
Yeah.
But as a female founder, they make better founders because they take less risk, manage their money better from that point of view. So I mean,
absolutely. It kind of translates both ways. And I mean, startups are risky. It's there's no denying that. So yeah, I think that's an excellent answer.
And again, this is hard business to break into, but because VCs, like, they're still predominantly investing in male startups, so there is probably a lot of still male domination in the area. But I don't know why women aren't applying for jobs with startups. I think it's just maybe some risk averse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have the benefits a startup should be looking for changed now that working from home is the standard versus, everybody being together? Should we be looking at different types of benefits packages
now? Benefits in the sense of like offering standard group benefits or
Well, I'm thinking, I don't know enough about, because I've always done this myself, but are we doing higher end computers and bigger screens at home and ergonomic
Yeah,
chairs? And, what are the types of things that people are looking for as
right. Yeah.
membership because I'm working at home now versus, I don't know what those are.
Yeah. Well, I think typically one thing that I've seen from the startups that I've worked with that, are completely 100% remote is offering some sort of amount of money that is going to cover whatever that person wants to use for a home office, whether that be, a new chair, a new desk, a new, like you said, something ergonomic that is going to help them. That's typically what I've seen. I'm sure there's a ton of creative solutions. But as far as benefits for remote workers, typically it's some sort of allowance that they can use for their home office, minus the things that are going to be specific for doing their job, like a computer, laptop, whatever type of technology that is like absolutely crucial to what they're doing.
Is something like high speed internet for people working from home a deduction or a benefit now?
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I had forgotten about that. That is another thing that that can be offered as a benefit. I think probably some companies would maybe mandate, in a job offer saying you have to have a certain speed of internet to take this job. Or some might say, here's this certain amount of money to invest in this type of internet. Again, going back to the allowance, but I think it's definitely something that's a point of conversation for benefits.
I really appreciate you taking the time today to answer all our questions and give us a really good idea and insights and tips and techniques on attracting and retaining the best talent at a startup level. I thank everyone for attending and all the great questions. They were fantastic. One more time for everybody, if people want to follow you or find out more, where do they go?
Yeah, if they want to follow me, again, my LinkedIn profile is listed. Shoot me a connection. Shoot me a message. Again, happy to answer any questions. I can actually, I didn't do it, but I can send, I guess, is there a chat link? I could actually send the website for the company that I work for. I can include that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, here we go. Pretty
Perfect.
standard.
Awesome. Copy
Yeah,
that to YouTube.
but yeah, that's about it.
Excellent. Again, thank you very much for your time and answering all our questions today. It's really appreciated and was very insightful.
Thanks so much for having me.